Good afternoon. Guten Abend. My name is Nicole Newman. We are so pleased that you're here. Wir freuen uns sehr, dass Sie hier sind. And we are so excited to have you participate and join our panel discussion today about the issues facing our LGBTQIA plus communities here in Indianapolis as well as in Cologne. I'm at the Max Kade Center, the German American Center here at Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis. The Max Kade Center, along with the Volkshochschule Köln, in partnership with both of our sister cities organizations in both Indianapolis and Cologne, have organized multiple events as part of the Urban Exchange Network, which is funded by Germany's Auswärtiges Amt and also supported by the DVV International Organization. These events are envisioned as a way to support the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which you may have heard about, and I encourage you to Google to learn more about. We chose number 5, which is gender equality, and as envisioning that, we've decided to open that up to the issues facing sexual orientation, as well as the gender identity spectrum, and try to support our communities and bring our communities into dialogue in the best way that we can by organizing multiple events and trying to create some transatlantic dialogue and also encourage civil democracy. We have a host of events beginning today with our first kickoff. Thank you all for joining our panel discussion throughout August. And we encourage you to attend as many of those events as you can, both in Cologne and in Indianapolis. They are all listed on the Max Kade website, and I'll put a link to that into the chat at a later time. But that's, if you Google MKC or Max Kade IUPUI, you can find a list of all those events, and they'll be popping up other places as well. I would like to begin our event, though, by acknowledging that the land on which we in Indianapolis gather is the occupied and contested territory of Native peoples, and we thus wish to acknowledge and honor the Miami, Delaware, Potawatomi, and Shawnee peoples on whose ancestral homelands and resources Indiana University, the entire system, was built and currently occupies. And I also wish to acknowledge that with its founding in 1969, IUPUI displaced a vibrant Black community in Indianapolis. I strongly encourage you to attend events and send support to our Native American and Indigenous Studies and Africana Studies programs at IUPUI because they are doing excellent work to create some more restorative justice in our communities. So today we are so pleased to welcome Veronica Pejril and Keith Potts from Indiana and Andreas Wolter from Cologne. Our distinguished panelists will be introduced in a moment by Katie Doyle, an incredible presence in the Indianapolis community and part of the Stonewall Democrats, and Humayra Mansouri, who is our institutional partner at the Volkshochschule Cologne. So after our panelists conclude their discussion, we have up to 2 hours today. We might not need it all, we might not want it all, but we have 2 hours scheduled today. We'll have time for a Q&A, and I just ask that you put any comments or questions into the Q&A box, and that's at the bottom panel and the bottom toolbar in your window within Zoom. So now it is my pleasure to introduce Katie Doyle. Katie.
Hello. Thank you, Nicole. Yes, I am Katie Doyle, the Vice President of the Indy Cologne Sister Cities Committee. As you can tell, I am in Indianapolis and have the pleasure of introducing City County Councilor Keith Potts and Councilor Veronica Pejril. Keith Potts is an Indianapolis City County Councilor who was first elected to the council in 2019. While serving on the council, he has led on issues related to the coronavirus, police policy reform, and supporting local businesses. He serves on the following committees: the Metropolitan and Economic Development, Parks, Education, and Environmental Sustainability, and is also the Vice President of the Indiana Stonewall Democrats. Keith is a strong advocate for the LGBTQ+ community and lives with his husband, Brian, on the north side of Indianapolis. Welcome, Keith, and thank you. Veronica Pejril first began her year of service representing the 3rd Ward on Greencastle City Council in January 2020, becoming Indiana's first openly trans elected official. She currently serves on the city's Budget Committee, the Human Relations and Sustainability Commissions, the Putnam County Housing Stability Committee, and 100 Women Who Care of Putnam County. She is also an officer on the board of directors for the Indiana Youth Group, an organization that works to ensure positive outcomes for LGBTQ+ Hoosier youth. In the political sphere, Veronica serves as secretary for the Indiana Stonewall Democratic Caucus. She is an alumna of Princeton's Graduate School, and she is an assistant professor at DePaul University's School of Music, where she teaches courses in music technology. Thank you, Veronica, for joining us as well. Now I'll hand it to Humaira to introduce our other panelists.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our session today, also from my side, and hello from Cologne. I'm sending you sunbeams. You can see it in my face. My name is Humaira Mansouri, and I'm one of the coordinators of our queer visibility project, Cohen Pride, between our sister cities of Cologne and Indianapolis, and I'm heading the social-political section at Volkshochschule Köln, which is the German word for adult education center here in the city of Cologne. We're very happy to have you here, and I'm also very pleased to introduce you to our deputy mayor of the city of Cologne. Hello, Andreas Wolter. We are very happy to have Andreas' support in the social and political work that we do for our beautiful city as an adult education center. Andreas Wolter is a person that supports queer rights and queer visibility, not just in Cologne, but also in many other sister cities that we have a close relationship with, and we are very, very thankful for that. Andreas Wolter is a member of the Cologne City Council and our deputy mayor, as I've already mentioned, and Andreas has been directly elected to the City Council 4 times in 2004, 2009, 2014 and 2020. And the City Council of Cologne elected him deputy mayor twice with a large majority. Andreas is also a board member of the German-French Committee of the Council of European Municipalities and Regions. And we are very happy that Andreas, Veronica and Keith are taking part in this very important discussion on social and political issues and queer rights and queer visibility in both our beautiful sister cities. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you. And thank you again all for joining us. We'll probably start out as maybe like a round robin situations that we're all not talking at once, but as the conversation continues, we can see how that flows. I'm sure we're all used to Zoom at this point. So here we go. So first I want to start with you, Veronica, if you just wanted to, we're going to let each panelist talk for a little bit just to kind of, speak a little bit more to yourself and your own work and how it interacts with the queer community.
Thanks, Katie. I appreciate that question. First and foremost, I want to point out that for our attendees here today, I'm actually about an hour west of Indianapolis. So I'm in the Indianapolis sort of extra urban belt. So we're still technically within commuting distance of the metropolitan area, but it's pretty rural here. And Greencastle is a community that is 1/100th the size of either Indianapolis or Cologne. So our queer community certainly has common challenges and common opportunities, but there are some unique challenges being in rural areas that beset our constituency. And being a ward counselor in Greencastle means that my constituency is a population of 2,500. So as we can sort of wrap our heads around how small that number of folks that I serve is, it allows me the opportunity to be intimate in my representation for folks. And one of the great things about representing in a small community such as ours is to have that visibility that's really amplified because proportionally speaking, I'm everything I do in the community winds up being in the newspaper and winds up in quite frankly being a public face of trans representation in a small community is so important for all gender expansive folks, and especially gender expansive youth who have been under legislative assault in our state house in Indianapolis. So I'll start there, but getting back to the nut of your question about the work that I do and how it might intersect with the queer community here, you know, I've been working on the part of our issues related to housing stability as well as housing access at every price point, and you know, hit our LGBTQ community has just as many challenges with getting access to housing in our community, if not more, than the cis and hetero community in here in Greencastle. So that's the first and foremost that I want to point out. The other thing that I'm highly engaged with right now in talks with our city's public safety officers is reframing the lens of public safety as being community safety, and that community safety is not just an absence of crime, but rather a presence of well-being, and particularly in through the lens of the rise recently of mental health challenges across all our communities, both urban and rural. It's important that all of our public safety officers are recognizing when they are qualified to serve for our community safety, but also recognizing that community safety is everyone's job. You know, how welcoming are we being to our neighbors, both the ones we actually live next door to and the people who simply are in our neighborhoods and live, love, and worship differently than we might. So I'll leave it at that.
That was great. Sounds like 2,500 people can be a lot when you you know, have all that to deal with. So we appreciate that. Andreas, would you like to go next?
So you can hear me all. I'm a very special place this evening because I'm sitting in a bunker of World War II, which is now in the city of Cologne, in part of Mülheim. That's a neighborhood here, and it's used as a cultural center. And I have a meeting here in this building tonight, and that's the reason I'm sitting here. So if you look around, you see, yeah, some parts of World War II, and that's made me thought a little bit a few minutes ago about that. In World War II, in Germany, more than 10,000 LGBTIQ were killed by Nazis in concentration camps. So that's the reason why we are so engaged, actually, especially in our city, to create a diverse society. And Cologne is one of the cities with around about 10% of the population declare as LGBTIQ, as they declare as queer, and so we have one of the biggest gay prides in Germany. Last summer, we had around about 25,000 participants and 1.6 million spectators joining the parade. So it's one of the biggest we have in Europe. I think in Madrid and Barcelona, they are it's nearly the same, but in Germany, it's one of the biggest. Our city is very engaged in human rights, as I told you, and we made it also as a part of our international local diplomacy. So when we have 22 sister cities, Indianapolis is one. And it's very important for me when I visit these cities also to talk about LGBTIQ issues. So we have cities as Volgograd, so former Stalingrad. We have also Katowice in Poland, in Romania, Istanbul in Turkey, also as well in South America, in Nicaragua, in Peru, in Rio. And it's always difficult to exchange about these issues. And as I learned a few years ago, there was a delegation from Indianapolis who was in Cologne, and there was also a person in this delegation was responsible for diversity. And so we were invited also to come to this dinner in the evening, and our mayor's office told us, please go to this person who's responsible for diversity in Indianapolis and talk to him. So we went there and said, well, we are here from the LGBTIQ officials from the city of Cologne, and I'm vice mayor, and he said, yes, I'm responsible for diversity, but not for LGBTIQ. And I'm very religious, and I don't want to talk to you about LGBTIQ issues. And he turned around, and the meeting was finished in 1 minute. So that was the experience with Indianapolis I made in the last 10 years. So I was a little bit astonished about it, because I thought Indianapolis is a big city, and perhaps on countryside it might be difficult, but it was a little bit, I didn't expect this answer. And what we see, we have a mountain to climb, that in all cities we have same rights for LGBTIQ people. It was a hard struggle also in Cologne in the last 20 years, because there was lack of money, and it was always, so sometimes the budgets of other departments had to get smaller, but we had no money. And then to say, but we need our counseling, we need to work with elderly people, LGBTIQ, we need now with all the refugees, also very important to care for the people coming from Syria, from Iraq, also now from Ukraine. And there are a lot of LGBTIQ people in that sense. So, and then to get the money, to get budgets to work with those people, it was a hard thing. But I think at least in the last year, so we created also our LGBTIQ office, and it works together with it's in the diversity of it directly at the Lord Mayor. So we work together with groups of the disabled people, elderly people, and the migrant groups. So that's one office, and that I think it's also a very good thing to learn from each other a little bit in the administration. And in the last years, we managed it also to empower this this unit. It was a very, very important thing in the last years. And now we are what we do at the Gay Pride. We invite always LGBTIQ activists from our sister cities to join the parade, but also to exchange. And that is very successful. And what we managed in the last years was especially Poland, where the situation is not very good for LGBTIQ people. So it was a success. So we go every year there to join the Gay Pride with a small delegation from Cologne. And in the first years, we wrote to the city, to the mayor of Katowice in Poland, and he said, no, don't contact me during this time. Now, after 10 years, there's a reception for us from the mayor, also with the LGBTIQ community, and the vice mayor opens a parade with me together in Katowice. And in the first years, there were several hundred right-wing extremists, very, very aggressive people. And last year, there were 3 religious persons demonstrating against this march. And so what we can see, if we talk and we are getting in touch with other cities, so there is sometimes a development, like in Romania too. What we don't, also in Dnipro in Ukraine, our new sister city in the east of Ukraine, Ukraine, they also told us, yes, we want to exchange with you about LGBTQIA issues. What's not possible is actually in Turkey, in Istanbul, also in Volgograd. So we canceled actually this sister cityship with Volgograd in Russia and China also. So that's a big problem. Yeah, but I think we are on a good way with states where there's an existing a civil society movement. Then you can act not over the mayors, but also with the with the civil society groups and these activists and human rights groups in our citizens.
Yeah, or if not, maybe give it 10 years and then you can, because it sounds like you really stayed on that. That was great. I hope to hear more about a lot of that later. And hopefully we can, you know, with our new delegation coming into Cologne for Pride, we can hope to shine a brighter light on Indianapolis and our efforts that we've made for our community. So thank you for that, Keith.
Thank you, Katie. And hello, everyone. My name is Keith Potts, he, him, his. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon, evening, whatever time you may be joining us. As Katie mentioned, I serve on the Indianapolis City and County Council. We have two forms of government in one, both the city and county government combined into one body. Indianapolis is the capital city of Indiana. We have a population of almost 900,000 in Indianapolis. We're the 15th largest city in the country. So Veronica and I have very different sort of constituencies that we work with. I represent about 42,000 people on the north side of Indianapolis, an area that is historically looked at as more of suburban, but has continued to grow over the past couple of decades and is very much an integral and growing part of our city. I am an openly gay man. I've been with my husband for about 10 years now. And I haven't always lived in Indiana, but life and love brought me here. And so I love being in Indianapolis and in Indiana and representing the community. I first got engaged with politics almost by accident. I'm a musician. I have a degree in music. Veronica and I have that in common, that we both work in the music field. But when I moved to Indiana, at the time, there were some laws being considered that would ban gay marriage or that would allow businesses and private organizations to discriminate against LGBTQ individuals or groups or families. And so that, of course, did not sit right with me. And I had some availability to get involved as a volunteer in some of these causes. And as life would have it, one thing leads to another. Then I worked on a campaign, then somebody needed to run for the city council. And I said, I'll throw my hat in the ring, and here we are. But my work primarily in my life is within the music field. But as I've grown into more of an activist and now as an elected official, I partner with some nonprofit organizations. A group that I spend a lot of time working with each year is called the Damien Center in Indianapolis. They're Indiana's largest healthcare provider for those living with HIV and AIDS, and one of the most significant healthcare providers specifically for the LGBTQ+ community in Indiana. They do incredible work, and it's wonderful to get to work alongside them every year. And we find opportunities to partner with them as a city in official capacities, as well as things that I do on my own time to support them and their work. As far as the work that I've done on the council connected to the queer community, I know we'll probably get into some more details in some other conversation topics that will come up. But I guess what I sort of wanted to just highlight is the work that I have done and that we do in Indianapolis and that every council does, it's very localized. It's very focused on day-to-day living of folks in the community. And what that means is that the queer community is always affected by every decision that we make. So when we had a discussion and a legislative change about policing policies, that does affect the queer community. It affects everyone, but we see that interactions between members of the queer community and police, we see that they're not always the most positive, or we see that there needs to be different types of training or policies. We're able to then pursue that with this new policy process that we have in Indianapolis. When we talk about budgeting for different sects of our local government, we have individual programs that are, for example, housing opportunities for people living with AIDS. That's a very specific grant that we're able to allocate that greatly affects the queer community. And so we are somewhat limited legislatively on what we can do on specific policies because of the relationship with our state legislature, which I'm sure we'll dig into a little bit later in some of these topics. But oftentimes our state legislature in the state capitol building will tell us what we can or cannot do at the local level. And since I am on the city council in the state capitol, it's literally, I'm in one building and the state capitol is about 4 blocks west of me. So we're very consistently having conversations and back and forths. And that results in us having to be strategic at the local level with not only the policies that we pursue, but also with the politics and the rhetoric that we utilize, so that we can be sure that we continue to build relationships at the State House, so that they'll continue to support us rather than, I'd say, hold us back from protecting and advocating for all of our constituents, but to this conversation, advocating for the LGBTQ+ community. And I think I'll stop there because I know we'll dig into a lot more things as the conversation continues. Glad to be here.
Yeah, no, that was great. That kind of leads us into our next topic a little, just also kind of hearing how your position works, not only with the state, but also how the state affects you at the local level. But I guess to each of you, if you could give a brief overview of like how your position or your city works directly with the LGBTQ community, and kind of how your LGBTQ community looks within your current community, and kind of how it looks maybe everywhere else outside of that within the state or even nationally. If you want to start with that, Keith.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So sort of picking up where I left off, discussing sort of our relationship with the state from the city perspective, an example that has happened just within the last 2 years, where you see sort of the disconnect or the challenges that we face. So in January of 2021 in Indianapolis, we passed a special resolution unanimously with support from both conservatives and more liberal and progressive counselors that said, we urge the state legislature to legislate a ban on conversion therapy, the harmful practice that tries to force specifically LGBTQ youth into no longer being LGBTQ. There's studies upon studies showing that this is a harmful practice, that it does not work, that there are higher rates of suicidal ideation for LGBTQ youth who are forced to go through this process. And so we at the local level, while we don't have the legislative authority to ban that practice locally, what we were able to do is author a special resolution that, like I said, passed unanimously and across the ideological spectrum, saying we urge the legislature, and as the capital city, we felt strongly that it was an obligation of ours to advocate for that because we really wanted to see that happen. Now, jump ahead to just a couple of weeks ago, the state legislature passed a law saying that no one can author a ban on conversion therapy at any level of Indiana government. So while we were trying to urge the state legislature to consider this, they have now made it law that local governments can't consider it, and the state government most certainly is not, at least with the makeup of the state legislature as it currently stands. So we see that there is sort of a push and pull, a back and forth with regard to the civil rights of the LGBTQ plus community that we're able to fight for at the local level. But when we do have those opportunities to use our platforms in the forms of special resolutions, holding press conferences, advocating for causes publicly, we use that as we call it the bully pulpit. We use it whenever we can, and we have to use it strategically because we do have members of our state legislature who are not necessarily of the same mind in wanting to see LGBTQ rights expand and grow and see the queer community as a protected group. And then what I'll just share as far as the LGBTQ plus community in Indianapolis, it is a large community and it is an incredibly diverse community. We hit every letter of the LGBTQ plus acronym, and it is within every demographic, racially and ethnically, religiously. We have such a broad community, and it's wonderful when, especially at our annual Pride festivities that usually draw about close to 100,000 people to Indianapolis, if not more. It's just so beautiful to see the diversity of our community that comes together. And when there are those things to fight against, for example, back in the day when there was, like I said, those legislative efforts to ban marriage equality, to sort of legislate discrimination against the queer community, we saw our entire community really band together to fight against those initiatives. And it's wonderful at Pride every year when we get together for a celebration, not as a means to try and defend and justify our humanity, but as an opportunity to celebrate the beauty of the queer community.
Yeah, no, that's great. It kind of, when you were talking about how sometimes when at the local level, you'll implement things and then the state will kind of essentially, overhaul it and say, absolutely not. It kind of reminds me of, tell God your plans and he laughs. It's kind of like, tell the state house your plans and they'll just shut it down, unfortunately. So, they'll try to one up you on that in some of the worst ways. But being the capital city, as someone who, can put those initiatives forward with such a big, number of people and importance behind it, is great. And maybe Veronica, you can I will remind folks, if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat as we go, and we will address those maybe during and also at the end. But Veronica, do you kind of want to?
Yeah, I'd be happy to elaborate a little more and perhaps give some rural perspective as well on what Keith was just sharing. Sometimes it backfires on the Indianapolis City County Council when they message that they're about to do something good for the community, and the state legislature, the General Assembly, decides to shut it all down. There was recently a kibosh on right turn on red in the center of the city that was clearly a petty response to a public safety issue that a local government was attempting to address within its own sphere. And we certainly see that kind of impact both at the big city level as well as in rural communities. You know, I want to uplift and be very clear that our rural communities and our small towns have queer people living here, and we have our Pride festivals as well. It's important to be visible. It's important to support those who are coming to terms with self-acceptance for who we are and how we express ourselves, especially in a climate when our own state legislature is actively working to ban our art forms and erase our history books from libraries and change the curriculum of schools so that our existence is wiped from history. It's more important than ever that we're very visible. With next month being Pride Month coming up, it's going to be quite a whirlwind. I'm doing all I can to be present at as many rural Pride events as I possibly can. Indy Pride, Indianapolis has their Pride Festival on June 10th, and as soon as I'm done with marching in the parade there, I'm going to be heading down to Lagodi, a community of 2,500 that is in very rural Southwest Indiana, and has just been recently, in the last couple of years, been launching a very active Pride community there. So I'm excited to be part of both of those things. That said, there are ways that both at the big city level and smaller communities that we, in our positions of legislative representation, can work to support the LGBTQ community. You know, my work with the Human Relations Board gives an opportunity for us to engage with all of our municipal employees, for example, and have conversations about how all of our diverse community constituencies within cities large and small are able to be served well and equitably by those agencies, municipal agencies. So when we have you know, festivals and you know, say for example, our disabled community in Greencastle, particularly, we're still addressing matters of accessibility to public buildings and public accommodations that still needs some re-engineering in our own city hall, which was designed with the 1970s architecture in mind. So we're working on things. It's all taking time, though. You know, it's important that especially when for someone like me who's serving in a rural community, I have had the opportunity to engage outside of my role for the city in ways that can impact the LGBTQ community as well, and recognizing that I'm the only one in the state with my particular background. I have accepted the opportunity to be at the table for a lot of things, including at the state level with Indiana Youth Group that's working very hard to ensure that our LGBTQ youth in particular are respected and have safe outcomes when their families may present them with an unaccepting environment. We provide rapid rehousing and support services, wraparound services, mental health care for those young people. And I'm very, very proud to support that organization as a member of that board.
That's great. Thank you. So Andreas, can you speak to that as well, kind of how your work interacts with the queer community, both locally and kind of how you see that support outside of your city as well?
Yes, of course. So what I would like to present you a little bit is our working group in the city council. So we have an LGBTIQ, we call it working group Queer now in our city, which works since 2006. And that's like this, that we elect several groups from LGBTIQ society in Cologne in this working group of the city council. So there are groups from lesbian associations, the LGBTIQ counseling center, transgender groups, HIV, AIDS, migrant groups, the youth center. The youth center was the first LGBTIQ youth center in Germany. It is now the biggest LGBTIQ center in Europe and the biggest youth center of Cologne. So we have several youth centers, but the LGBTIQ is the biggest one. But this working group Queer meets 4 times a year, and we work together with the administration and also the elected members of the parliament, so the political groups. Everyone sends one person in this group, but also the LGBTIQ people of this working group are allowed to send in each committee, cultural affairs, mobility, youth, social affairs, one member also in this committee, where you can't vote, they can't vote there, but they can make proposals, applications in these committees. They're allowed to, also to the city council. Also, this working group can make proposals for the city council. And that's our way we work together with our society in Cologne. We don't have this only with LGBTIQ. We have it also with elderly people. We have it with we have an integration council where also the migrants elect members in this integration council. So that's the way in Cologne we interact, we work together with this group, and it works. I think it works very good. So because we discuss the things were important very early with the groups, because they came into the city council and said, "Here, we've got a problem. Please, we want to discuss it." We made our LGBTIQ action plan, and we also put money in this plan. The important thing that more than 20 departments are involved in this plan, and also the departments have to make proposals from their own budget also to better the situation. And this action plan works. We started in 2017, and as in a democratic state like Germany, a federal state, it works. It needs a few years until it works. Now it started in 2020. What we made was really interesting was it was also an application from the LGBTIQ community, the economical factor of LGBTIQ in our city. We made a survey and a study, and it was quite interesting that this 10.6% of our population and also this a lot of LGBTIQ people coming to weekends in Cologne, so it's an important factor for the economy in Cologne. So, and I show you there was a newspaper, and they said, "So gay is Cologne." So and we showed with this study what in which part of the economy it works, and now nearly every company in Cologne they have also the rainbow flag in front of their head office, because they know it's also very important that everyone feels welcome also in the company. So that's so what we do as city: visibility, acceptance, image. So another picture. So we have also our metro. We have it in the rainbow colors. We made it, and also our bridge in Cologne is also there. The rainbow flags. If they're the Pride Week. So that is what you can do as city. And yeah, what we are doing. So I talked a little bit about our project. Sister Cities Stand Together for LGBTQIA rights. They are human rights. So we make this change, and it's also very good. It has a good impact on the relations to our sister cities. And last thing I would like to tell you, our Rainbow Cities Network. So Cologne was one of the founders from the Rainbow Cities Network in Europe. We started with Barcelona, with Torino, with I think it was Utrecht and Amsterdam. And now this is a big network, not only for Europe. We also have members now in, by example, Mexico City, by example, cities in Brazil like Sao Paulo, and the last member was also from the US, so it was San Francisco. And why shouldn't Indianapolis join also this network? So that's what you have to do is you have to have one responsible person or a department who's responsible for LGBTIQ questions and issues, and you have to join once a year this meeting. Now it works also online, like we do this, but I think it's also very important to exchange each other. And this network is growing and growing, and so I'm very happy also to make this the exchange with you today. That I now learn that that is not diversity is not only on ethnical or religious issues. So it's a big community in Indianapolis.
Yes, definitely not. Absolutely. And I'm already seeing some similarities. We in Indy and around the state, but Indy specifically, you know, when Keith kind of mentioned almost close to 10 years ago now, when, you know, we did kind of a big push within the business community specifically. You know, as you walk downtown, you will also see within businesses, you know, stickers, rainbow stickers that say you are welcome here, as well, to kind of not only show that support, but also to kind of give more confidence to our community to be able to you know, shop where they want and eat where they want and feel safer. So you know, that's really small things like that are incredibly important to our community. You know, just having rainbow flags around your city during Pride, you know, is such a show of solidarity to our community and to the allies around the city, you know, to say that we are here and we're not just, you know, numbers or statistics. We're your neighbors and your friends and your elected officials. So it's vitally important. So some of the things we've kind of already talked about, you know, with public safety, banned and burned books, with the banning of conversion therapy. And as some of you probably don't know, we are one of very few states that still have that. So we are really still working hard, you know, with to ban such a draconian, horrible thing, which is, you know, something we, not just another thing we have to fight for every day. But Andreas, if you'd like to start with maybe some of the most pressing concerns that you see in your community impacting the LGBTQ community.
I need a few seconds to unmute the mic. So, yeah, I was wondering what's the most pressing thing. So, what we can see is if people, mostly young people, but not always the young people, have their coming out, it's very often a question of education or social range. If there is yeah, if there are bad reactions of the parents, of the family, of on your work, and I think it's one of the biggest problems we have, especially if people were transgender, to transgender people. So that's a big issue. But as well, also, and it's very often because they are rather conservative or didn't grow up with this LGBTIQ people like they did in Cologne in the last 40 years. Also, the migrant groups we have in our city. So if migrants find out they're queer, then they often get problems with their families. And that is one thing we have to, we have to empower those people. And since it's a big issue, but also in German families, so the religion plays in some parts of our society also a very important role. And so we have, that I think that's a point we have to strengthen our efforts in the next years. And there's also one political thing. It's a right-wing populism. So this rollback, like we saw it a little bit in Poland, but there's also that's, but like in Russia or in Turkey. So we have big problems with the LGBTIQ people have big problems, and that's also perhaps regarding on Russia one reason why this liberal society supports also Ukraine in the war against Russia, because in Ukraine the situation of LGBTIQ people is not very good, but they can make the manifestations, the demonstrations, the parades, so they organize, they can meet. They have no many rights in the law, but they exist and there was a coexistence. But in Russia, it's not possible. And with this war, Russia wants also to destroy this liberal movements, not only in Ukraine. I think if they win this war there, they go to Baltic states, to Poland, and because they want to restore their old Soviet Union system. And I'm a little bit afraid also about these developments we have not only in Europe. I think it's the same in the United States in some regions, and I think there we have to pay attention that there is no rollback, and we have to stand together with all the other groups, with the migrants, also with disabled people, and that's good that we are working together also in the city of Cologne in one office.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's not even the rollbacks that, that really scare me. It's the things that we've never even thought of or had to deal with. Banning books is, who would have thought we would have been here. And the religious aspect is, also plays a part. I'm sure in every LGBTQ community, but when Keith spoke about kind of the business sector a few years ago and how we had to fight against LGBTQ folks being fired from their job for being gay, or not being able to get their wedding cake made at a certain bakery because they didn't support LGBTQ issues. I mean, that policy in Indiana that they passed was essentially, or were, trying to, was the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which, says you're impeding on my religion by asking me to bake you a cake for your gay wedding. I mean, it's like, well, I guess we'll go get our cake elsewhere, but it's giving businesses and people the opportunity to discriminate, essentially. But I mean, like I said, have those at every step of the way. But Keith, would you like to speak about maybe some pressing concerns that you see within our community as well?
Absolutely. And just to the point you were just making about businesses denying service, or folks from the community choosing to take their business elsewhere, that was a circumstance that my husband and I actually encountered while we were shopping for vendors for our wedding. Specific designer who was doing invitation printing. We really enjoyed their designs, but when we checked out their social media account, they had shared from their business page multiple anti-trans and transphobic articles and links and posts. And we immediately said, well, then we are certainly going to take our business elsewhere. But to the question of sort of what's the most pressing issue, or what is one of the most pressing issues affecting our communities, from my perspective, and from what especially we saw in our Indiana state legislative session and what we're seeing politically nationally in the US, is protecting our children. We need to protect our children in so many ways, particularly LGBTQ plus youth. They are already, and for those of us who have gone through this process, we know they're already facing such difficult challenges internally, emotionally. So then when people from the outside are trying to legislate them out of existence, or trying to say that they don't exist anymore. I mean, some of the most important relationships or mentors that I had growing up, while we never directly had conversations about it, were the educators who I knew were part of the queer community. They were an incredible and important part of my education. And it's not because they talked about it all the time, like some folks are trying to make it seem. It's because they just existed. It's because they were who they were, and they didn't apologize for it. And that's why I think it's so incredible that we're continuing to see more and more LGBTQ plus people getting elected, like Veronica in Greencastle, like we have many openly LGBTQ folks elected in Indianapolis, including someone in our state legislature. And I know Veronica and Katie and many of us here in Indiana, we work very closely with a group called the Victory Fund, which advocates for candidates for elected office from the queer community, because that visibility element is just so important. I mean, we saw in American politics how crucial it was to see Pete Buttigieg succeed at such a prominent and national level in a visible way. And he continues to be out there as a cabinet secretary, of course, but his role, while his sexuality was never front and center in his campaign, and I don't think you'd find anyone from the queer community who would put their sexuality or their gender at the forefront of their campaign as being the reason why they're running necessarily, but him also not apologizing for it, and for any folks from the community not apologizing for it, that in and of itself helps our children to see that this is not a bad thing. It was a conversation I had back in my campaign in 2019 with a constituent who, she started tearing up while we were having coffee together because her teenage son had just come out to her. And she was scared for what that meant for him and his future, but she was able to point to my candidacy. I wasn't even elected at that time, but she was able to point to me and say, look, this is a gay man. Remember, he just came and knocked on our door. And he's exactly who he is, and he's out there, and he might be an elected official one day. So it's so important for that representation and visibility. But to bring it back to the most pressing issue, it is protecting our children. The books that they read are lifesavers. I remember the books that I read when I was in middle school and high school that absolutely saved me. And they are now books that are being banned. And it's a shame. We see medical care and emotional well-being, mental health care being taken from children, not just in Indiana, but across the country. And so I think that's the most pressing thing. And it's always been the case when queer rights are moving forward that there is then a demonization of the community, accusing us of being terrible, terrible things that we are not. And so I think continuing to have visibility to fight against it, continuing to unapologetically advocate for our LGBTQ youth is on all of us, and it's going to be a fight, but I know we'll win it.
Yeah, absolutely. That was all great, because I think that's the purpose behind a lot of this, is to like you said, is to take away our seats at the table, or try to deny freedoms for a select group of people. And it's again, some of that ties back to the religious thing. I will remind people, Indiana is the home state of Mike Pence. So that gives you just a lot of kind of awareness. But then we, like you said, have presidential campaigns like Pete Buttigieg, and it's, normally the people outside the community who are the first to ask, you as an LGBTQ person, can you win office? Can you run for an elected position? Would you, is it safe for you to run statewide? Per se. So I think those are all great points, and it's protecting the youth with not only opportunities like books, but also opportunities like extracurriculars. So Veronica, if you want to speak to what you think are the most pressing concerns, but maybe also kind of inform folks on the most recent legislation to ban trans youth from participating, trans female youth specifically, from participating in sports, and kind of some other issues that you see.
Yeah, I would like to sort of tie some threads together from both Keith's and Andreas's remarks, because the same kinds of forces that have been at play in Russia and in Hungary with Orban's government, and less so from the right in other European countries, are at play in the United States as well. But I also want to uplift with a bright point of light to recognize that the fact that state legislatures now across the United States are working against affirming care and full participation in schools for trans youth, that this recent legislative phenomenon is a response to losing political traction from other places. In other words, because of the Obergefell ruling, and legalizing marriage equality, and because of the Bostock ruling in the Supreme Court of the United States, legalizing and giving the right to work for folks irrespective of their sexual orientation or gender identity, that these are these forces have needed to find a new boogeyman. And so they're now picking on people who have the least political power of all, and that's people who can't vote. So they're picking on kids now. But you know, I doubt that they're going to stop there with respect to trans rights. And in fact, we've seen evidence both in the state of Florida and the state of Missouri, where there are now efforts underway to make affirming healthcare inaccessible for adults as well as children in those states. And I can kind of smell it coming around the corner in the state of Indiana as well. And we need to be on guard and at the ready to push back against those efforts. That all said, I'm a parent of two. My children are grown. My twins turned 29 this year. But you know, as a parent, I'm very protective of my kids, and I can respect just how important it is for our kids to be safe. And safety means that their well-being is affirmed in their schools, and that they can fully exist and participate in public life as adults as they grow into their adulthood. And I'm really, really worried for our young people these days, especially LGBTQ youth. But you know, when books about LGBTQ folks and our histories, and about Black folks and other people of color and their histories are erased from our schools, that harms every student and that harms every young person. And seeing this recent effort to literally whitewash our libraries and erase important struggles for humanity from our history is just an abomination to who we are as humans on this planet. And so you know, I think that the most pressing concern here are these especially efforts against our children, and especially against gender expansive kids in our community. You know, even in my small community of 10,000, we do have gender expansive kids in our school, and in our schools, and you know, my constituency includes parents who wish to affirm their trans kids' care, and may need to seek healthcare from outside the borders of our state, which is just a real shame.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes with these policies, you know, specifically with the banning of books, I feel it's kind of in a process right now where sometimes it's just, you know, the policies that they as in, you know, Republicans, essentially, you know, even some of these policies that they put forward that may or may not even get passed or implemented, you know, they always, it's fear tactics, right? It's fear and confusion. Even, you know, we've got libraries that are starting to empty their shelves because they don't know what books they're allowed to put or not. And when you know, when they write specific things in there that say, you know, we could be, you know, to go as far as to say we can be arresting librarians for, you know, or teachers for putting specific books on the shelf, and, you know, but not, you know, not giving specific criteria that makes any sense. And so we have kind of seen.
If I can punctuate the point just here, Katie, my point of tying together Andreas's and Keith's points to this was the fact that those political organizations that worked against marriage equality, those political organizations that worked against you know, our right to work as who we are, those organizations are the same organizations that are now lobbying in state houses against trans kids. That's because they've run out of other things to gain political traction with, and they've just found a new boogeyman.
Oh yeah, 100%. We see them, we see them, we know who they are, we know them as the enemy. But when we are able to kind of block certain things or maybe hinder them from doing certain things, they find, like you said, they find another enemy to attack, and it's almost always our most vulnerable. It's tends to fall on near or on the LGBTQ community. But as much as they, ban youth from playing sports or ban books, we still exist. Like you said, Keith, we still exist. So you can take away freedoms or tell us not to live our lives, but we're still here. And so it's always important to have representation at the table and in the spaces, because if we as a community aren't speaking to these issues, but also relating them in real ways to, our lives. And like I said, being not only an elected official in or if you as an elected official in your district, Keith, but you're also a neighbor, you're also a friend, you're also, someone who goes to the local gym. These are people that we live everyday lives beside. So it's important to, not only for allies to fight for our community, but for us to be able to have a seat at that table and to make sure that LGBTQ, rights and are being highlighted, and that the issues are being highlighted, and that we unfortunately may be one in a room of a lot of other people and have to speak kind of as our communities sometimes, and that can be hard. Being the first Veronica is never, I'm sure, not easy, as people even as celebrated as it is. But yeah, there's some real issues, and we really appreciate you guys not only highlighting those, but also consistently and continually fighting for them. Which kind of brings us to a lighter topic for some positive initiatives, because there are some great things that we've been able to do. I know, Andreas, on your side, your LGBTQ office, and it sounds like the things that you guys have been able to do to kind of specifically focus on it, or specifically create groups that are able to focus on LGBTQ issues in the community and kind of speak on that. But maybe if you want to start, Andreas, on what are some initiatives that you feel that you've maybe already implemented that support the community, or that you feel you can implement to support the community, both maybe policy initiatives within your work, but also, like you said, the kind of new groups that you may be creating to, give focus to that. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is becoming a hotter topic that people really care about. I know business communities here have been focusing on it. It's great. Time seems to be an underlining factor here. It's really about time we start focusing on these things and highlighting the inclusiveness and the diversity, and being that person at the table in that diverse lens. But what are some positive initiatives or programs or groups that you have implemented, or maybe see coming down the pipeline here?
I think I talked about our youth work we're doing in Cologne. So what we managed with our LGBTIQ youth center, that there's a cooperation with the Catholic youth center in Cologne. So we are on the ground, not the church who is the officials, but with the people working in with the young people together. They see there are more and more LGBTIQ people also in the Catholic organizations. And at least I said, okay, we don't want to send them in the LGBTIQ youth center. So they said, please, LGBTIQ center, come one day a week in our center, and we work with the people. The LGBTIQ youth center is more political. It's a bar. And in this other youth centers, you cook together. You're playing in the evening. And we see then also that our LGBTIQ youth, they love it. Not only to be political, just be a kid with 13, 14, 15 years and play with other people, with other LGBTIQ together. And that's also especially here where just in this bunker here, that's in the right side of Cologne, where more the workers are living, the worker families, more poor people are living here. And we see there's also there's a big request of those offers. My English is not very perfect, but I hope you understand it.
Yeah.
So that's, and what we are doing, we are going to schools. So education is very important. And in the more richer parts, in the western and southern part of Cologne, we have a lot of diversity schools and LGBTIQ open-minded schools. But here in the eastern part or the northern part of Cologne, it's much more difficult. And I think there we have a long way to walk until it's easier. So I know that it was 20 years ago, it was the same in the other parts of Cologne. And what we need also, there's a very good example, it's not from Cologne, but from our French sister city, Lille. And they told us they have a sister city in Poland, which declared as LGBTIQ free zone. And then, you know this? So the city or the regions in Poland, there were decisions by the councils to declare as LGBT free zone. So there is no propaganda for LGBT, and the flag is forbidden, and so on and so on.
Like a sundown town for LGBTQ.
Huh?
I don't, if you know what it's, so they're not allowed, you're saying, not even kind of a presence?
They aren't allowed, but they did it. But the school in from our sister city in France said, okay, as long this declaration is valid in our sister city in Poland, we don't send any pupils to your city, because around about 15-20% of our pupils declare as queer, and if they are not welcome, no one goes there. So sometimes we have, I think we also have to find answers then for this discrimination acts we see in other societies, or sometimes on cities and countries. At least the last point, I think what's going on very well is a collaboration between the churches, the LGBTIQ people in churches. We have a big initiative called Out in Church. And I think they need a lot of support from the community. That not only priests, also people who are working in Catholic hospitals, in different associations. The Catholic Church in Cologne is very strong, so it's relevant here. And these people are very brave because they can lose their job. And what's a good point actually is because we need workers. So we have full employment here nearly, and the people. So also the church. It's not possible to get out all these social workers and the people who work in the hospitals, doctors, because they declare gay, and that helps actually a little bit in the discussion. And I think there we have to strengthen our efforts in the next step. So this clash of civilization, this conservative group of Muslims and Catholics and evangelical, so religious people, and on the other hand, there's progressive groups who support queer communities, and that is, I think, our job we have to do also in the next years as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. We in Indianapolis, I say we, not myself, although I do plan to go to the next one. They've started a Catholic LGBTQ group, which of course the archdiocese immediately said, made them change their name because it almost seemed too connected to the church, and they didn't want to be a church group. But as a Catholic myself, you see kind of what I see as something helpful is, when people in those positions like the Pope, say things that not only highlight, but kind of get people away from the hatefulness towards, the other, whether it be LGBTQ people, et cetera. But, we've the group here that we have with the LGBTQ Catholic group, I think the first meeting, I think they're having their fourth one this month, and the first one was about 50 people, and the last one was about 300 people. So, I think it's definitely something that's growing, and I think it's important because, gay people can be Catholics, and they can do both. We say separation of church and state, but like you said, sometimes it's kind of easy to associate conservatives with specific religions, but to be able to say that you can be a part of the LGBTQ community and be Catholic. You can be LGBTQ and go to church. And believe in God. I mean, it's like, this is not something that's specific to cis people. So I think that's great that you are connecting on that level, because the church still does have in any type of religion a lot of power and a lot of community, so they can also be powerful in a sense that they can lead with a voice that is kind and loving and not hateful to match hateful policies. Keith, do you also want to talk about maybe some positive initiatives? Also, I will remind everyone again, don't forget that you can drop some questions in the Q&A that we can get to.
And I'll just sort of echo what we were sort of just talking about. I know there are multiple churches and faith institutions within my district and throughout Indianapolis that not only don't fight against the LGBTQ plus community, but they actively fight for the LGBTQ plus community.
There's a difference.
There is a big difference there. And so that is something that I think has not always been the case, and it's not then necessarily had as widespread of support and reach as it does currently. And I think that movement is only going to continue to grow, because we see with every struggle for equality, the fight continues and the advocates continue to grow, and the coalition gets bigger and bigger over time until it's no longer needed. But we are constantly having to continue that fight, continue that push forward. And something else that I would just highlight as a positive is what I think we're also seeing, and I know we're seeing it here in Indianapolis and throughout the state, the country, the world even, is that younger generations right now, whether it's Gen Z, who are in their late teens to 20s, and then Gen Alpha, who's in elementary, middle school, and high school right now, we are just continuing to see a more open-minded, thoughtful, considerate, empathetic generation continue to grow. I have the fortunate opportunity each year to return to my high school that I went to in Illinois, just outside of Chicago, to teach for a 10-day stretch. And that actually just concluded this past weekend. And while I don't have too much one-on-one interaction with the students themselves, but getting to observe how open-minded and thoughtful they are, how welcoming they are to all sorts of students. There are trans students, non-binary students, gay students, bisexual students, queer students. You see every beautiful element of the queer spectrum represented, and there isn't a moment's hesitation from these students. So it's just wonderful to get to observe, and I'm just so optimistic about the future with these generations, not only becoming integral parts of our society, but also becoming voters and becoming advocates for their friends, their classmates, their families, themselves. We're seeing young people being unafraid to advocate for themselves when they belong to the queer community. Whereas even when I was in high school, it was something I was afraid to do because it was still marriage equality was not a thing. Gay rights were very limited, even in a state that is viewed as pretty progressive like Illinois. But positive initiatives from our positions and from my position as a city county councilor, again, sort of looping back to the conversation we were having earlier about the legislature and things like that, we're somewhat limited in terms of positive initiatives we can take. But what we can do, like I mentioned with our special resolution on a conversion therapy ban, is we can use our positions, our platforms to advocate, to be strong advocates, to show up at the State House and testify, as I know Veronica has on different occasions. And when you show up with the title or a position, that means something, and it makes folks in positions of power listen just a little more closely than they might otherwise. So I think that's one of the most positive things that we can see and that we can pursue is the continued advocacy and fight, specifically for those who are willing to step up and stand up to those in positions of higher power and fight for the causes and the progress that we hold near and dear to our hearts. So that continued fight is something, while it's difficult, I also see it as a very positive and hopeful thing.
Absolutely. Veronica, do you want to add?
Yeah, I'll keep my remarks short, but some of the things that the others have said have really resonated with me. You know, partnering with our faith communities and partnering with
Oh no, did we lose her? Oh, you there?
I'm here.
Okay, partnering with our.
Yeah, I'm not sure why because I have a wired network connection, but apparently it chonked out for a moment there. Yeah, partnering with the faith communities and partnering with teachers, it's huge because so I can share a little bit of personal narrative, and I'll try to keep it brief. You know, when I ran for office, the office I hold back in 2019, you know, I made it clear that I'm trying to make this community a more welcoming and more affirming community for everybody, no matter who you love or what you look like or how you worship. You know, and I pointed out that my opponent in the race had posted some rather Islamophobic remarks on social media, and the conversation got quite heated after I made that public. And it went so far as a petition circulated amongst the local pastors in our local churches um, in support of my campaign, which was, you know, I feel like we need to be listening to each other on that regard, because you know they've supported me, and I want to definitely support them. You know, when what I was pointing out is that in my district, DePaul University has its Center for Spiritual Life, where on every Friday, residents of the Muslim community go for Friday prayer. And if those folks can't feel safe and welcomed in our community, then something's wrong with our community, and we need to work on that. Additionally, I've been in conversations with teachers about the challenges that they're feeling right now from the legislation in our Indiana State House. I've heard from more than a handful of teachers who have told me about the gender expansive kids in their classes, and the notion of referring to them as something other than the name that they want to be referred to as is just downright disrespectful of your students. And if you're trying to in culture a atmosphere of mutual respect in the classroom, which is the core of our civil discourse, if the state is forcing you to go against that respectful civil discourse, then something's certainly wrong with what the state is telling us about how we should be teaching in our classrooms. As far as official policies or that we can, or initiatives that we can put forth, we can create resolutions that don't necessarily have teeth. Doing a full bore ordinance that bakes in equal if the state has really tied our hands in many ways, and I'm unfortunately we're left with being able to do at the very most toothless kinds of responses at this time. That's why we need to work to unseat those people.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah. And although a lot of these ordinances, as Veronica mentions, I know the Indiana Stonewall Democrats in particular, have kind of been pushing for these in cities all over the state. In Indiana, we have 121 cities, and things. I would say for the LGBTQ community specifically, passing things at the local level seems to always be kind of the easier step, but also just really helpful in terms of awareness. So I know for Pride Month, we try to reach out to an array of mayors and city council members, asking them to, put forth ordinances within their city, just for recognition of Pride Month, because even something like that, which most people maybe aren't watching their city council meetings, but it's on record, and we as a group get to share that various cities are supporting our community. We do have a whole array of prides across the state, and it seems to be getting bigger. In a large city just north of us, Carmel, they started a pride recently. It was actually just a group of high schoolers, who kind of set up in a parking lot, and I don't even think we're able to get a permit from the city, but it was, they were able to it grew so fast that they were really able to get people to, not only pay attention, but participate. And getting, I do see as maybe less as an LGBTQ group, but more with elected officials and such, it does seem to be kind of hard to get into the school system, to be able to not only just educate young people on why it's so important to vote, but also to speak to these issues of what's happening, amongst and to the LGBTQ community, but also how to support and how to be an ally. So I know that one of our next couple topics is kind of how we can work together or maybe see policies or programs that you have in Cologne that we might be able to, implement here, or where we kind of have those same ideas or functions within our groups. So I would like to know if, where you all maybe see some common ground, or where you see maybe some things that you can, some takeaways that you might have, or some questions that you all have for each other. I would be pretty interested to hear, Andreas, maybe how you guys have been able to get LGBTQ folks and voices in advocacy, within schools, and specifically the Catholic community. But if you guys maybe want to have more of a cross communication here, if we want to, take ourselves off mute. But if you guys have any, questions for each other, or maybe some expanding on some things that you've heard today, that way we can kind of wrap this up with this one at the end, to maybe allow for some more questions at the end as well. Does anyone want to?
I just wanted to uplift that we've already through the conversation that we've had over the last hour or so, highlighted so many things that we have in common across our communities, and not just common struggles, but common things to celebrate amongst ourselves, and that gives me hope, especially as you mentioned, in all of our communities across the globe. It's the young people who are working to advance equality and representation everywhere. So that's just what I've noticed. That's my reflection, my reflective takeaway from this conversation here today. I don't necessarily have a question for the others.
Love that. And as you said, or as Keith also highlighted, getting louder. The younger voices are also, they're getting more and more impactful. They're getting louder, and they're getting, we're getting more and more of them. So it's always hopeful is a great word to use, especially after some of the things we've, as a community, have been through this year. Andreas, do you have any some takeaways or some commonalities that you see, or maybe some other questions that you might have for our counselors?
Yes, we talked a lot about how we can enter in communities which are a little bit closed for us. So sports, migrants, the conservative society, religious groups. I think especially conservative and religious groups, that might be also an issue for both cities, for Indianapolis as well as Cologne in Germany. And I think it's very important. So that's the reason we do this also today, to set LGBTIQ issues on the agenda of our international relationship. So I do this in the networks where I was elected. So in UCLG, that's the World Council of Cities and Local Authorities, also at the European level. And so we have our Rainbow City Network, so where cities were engaged. And I think it's very, very important to collaborate in this networks, and the networks who are not especially LGBTIQ, like UCLG or so, to put it on the agenda. I think that's very, very, very important also to support our communities in the cities where the LGBTIQ rights are not as good as it is here in the bubble of Cologne, where a lot of things are running very, very well. But if you go in these neighborhoods where a lot of more poorer people or migrants are living, it's not as beautiful as in the parts where I live right now. And that means also to our sister cities, that we have to, perhaps to confront or to take them also to LGBTIQ groups, and if there are some exchanges on political or administration level, also to include LGBTIQ community. I think that's very important for the next steps. Also to that not only the Netherlands and Sweden and Germany and California, the situation is very well, but in other states it's not as good as it should be.
Yeah, with the sun shining and children happily playing in the background, it
Yeah.
sounds
You see the
awesome.
bunker from outside. I'm on the 3rd floor now, and that's
Wow.
so I'm nearly on a rooftop. That's a bunker. It was a building in World War II, and it's so many. It's so so strong building, you can't destroy it.
Well, good. Now that you've moved outside, but no, I mean, I think that's right in terms of sometimes being in a city, you know, even me in Indianapolis, you know, the policies that happen within our state and across the state are so harmful, but sometimes in a city like Indy that is, you know, I would say very LGBTQ friendly and open and accepting, you know, sometimes it's kind of hard to forget that outside of the city, you know, it is so different, and that I have almost the protection of a fabulous mayor and a fabulous big majority on the city council that I can kind of fall to as my support, you know, when the state tries to do otherwise. So you know, it's good to go to those communities, like you said, to bring LGBTQ issues into those communities, as opposed to waiting for them to kind of say what, you know, what they need or what they might be able to do. It's a good kind of reminder of that. Keith, what about you? Do you have any?
Yeah, so I think Veronica and Andreas mentioned a lot of the things that I would allude to from this conversation upon reflection, but my big broader thought here, I suppose, is something that's just sort of a leadership principle for me personally, but something that I think our cities can all collaborate on. Is I always say, no one has a monopoly on good ideas. So we can continue to learn from one another. We can continue to share our best ideas and our successes with one another. We can continue to share our challenges with one another, because it's only through that collaboration, that partnership, from cities big to small, from cities in the US to Germany, from all sorts of different types of initiatives at all levels, we can always learn from one another. We can always share our best practices, what we learn from our mistakes. And so I think that's what's so inspiring and exciting about continuing this relationship and building upon this relationship here, that we can continue to learn from one another, share with one another, and just see and build upon the beautiful communities that we have and the great relationships that we have.
Absolutely. Yes. Andreas, it's like, where did you go?
Yeah, but one remark is left for me. So that was a very, very good exchange, but perhaps next time we do it in person and in presence, and because I would like to show you what we are doing here. You can only see me and now a little bit of background here, but to visit all these organizations we have and to learn and how it works, and also I think it would be important not only for the LGBTIQ community, also I think for the political and elected people as well as the administration to see what's going on. So what we are doing also, if we invite for our LGBTIQ exchange, we don't invite only the activists, we also invite, by example, political representatives or the administration to learn. That's it possible between Indianapolis and Cologne next time.
Absolutely. I think we can arrange that. That would be great. Of course. Thank you, Humaira. Humaira is also welcoming us to Cologne via chat. So we appreciate that. Nicole, oh, perfect, you're back. Did you have any comments or questions that you can see on your end from participants?
We don't, but we're happy in the last 5-10 minutes to welcome you to put any comments or questions that you might have into the Q&A. We're happy to also connect you with folks afterwards if you have any burning questions. I would just like to say I do so appreciate that I think each of you in different points throughout the conversation spoke to the intersectionality of our identities, that we don't just exist within our own sexual identity, our gender expansive identities, but also our religious identities, our community identities, right? That all these things play or come into contact and in concert with one another, and that's so important to take a very holistic approach to the issues facing our queer communities, because they aren't in isolation, and because everybody has different experiences based on where they are, what communities they also intersect with beyond just their sexual or gender identity. And I really appreciated that, we also can use the different organizations that, even though there is a sort of Christian nationality push within at least Indiana and a lot of our other problematic legislature and legislation being pushed through right now, that there are still allies within the religious communities. And Andreas, we did have a youth summit with our Indiana youth group with Anyway in Cologne. It was wonderful because one of the students or young people said that they found more acceptance at their Catholic school after they transferred from a public school. So we do know that we have allies in different parts, and to make sure that we draw upon those experiences is so wonderfully important. It looks like we have one comment in the Q&A. Let me just look at that. Our sister city partner, Veronica, part of our Cohen Pride team, just wanted to say thank you to everyone for the great conversation, and to Katie as well for your excellent moderation. I think we can leave it there unless anyone has any closing comments. Katie, I'll let you determine when we close off, but I wanted to say thank you again on behalf of the Cohen Pride Project, and we look forward to connecting with you further.
Yes, definitely. And as Nicole said at the beginning of this, we do have our project has some other events coming up, as well as a Pride Exchange to welcome our some of our friends from Germany to Indianapolis in June to kind of see our community in our city in live and living color, and to do the same in July. So I appreciate all of you being here today and giving your input and your feedback, and again for just continuing to not only fight for our community but represent our community in important places and spaces. So yeah, thank you all. And I will, if anyone else doesn't, if you guys don't have any other comments, I appreciate it, and look forward to more conversations and more community building.
Yeah, I take now a drink due to the sundown we had actually here in Cologne, due to this very good exchange. So thank you for this.
Absolutely. Thank you. Humaira?
Yeah, and I just wanted to thank everybody here taking part in the conversation, and also listening to us, for your time and for your appreciation, and that you are so much engaged and involved in human rights. Queer rights are human rights. And we feel very, very inspired also for our work that we're doing in the civil society. And we feel inspired that we have partners like you. And we are very happy to continue with many, many other events. And we really hope to see you soon in person as well. I can only emphasize what Andreas Wolter said. we are very happy to welcome part of you here in Cologne very, very soon, in 2 months, and also all of you, hopefully, also in the next months and years. And it's very important to stay in touch and keep our exchange up. So thank you very much and big up. Thank you, Katie. It was a pleasure to have you as a moderator. And thank you also from my side for everybody who is taking part tonight. That's really cool.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Veronica, do you have one more thing to add?
I just wanted to say thank you for everybody who helped facilitate this conversation today and bringing us together. It was really a great opportunity, and it's always wonderful to make new friends.
Absolutely. And, you know, this year is 2019, where our state has our municipal elections are occurring. So hopefully in November, we'll be able to elect even more amazing city councilors and mayors to help us, to help us fight for these issues on the local level, and hopefully next year combat it at the state level even more. So again, thank you all. I appreciate it and look forward to connecting again sometime in the future.